right, historically, we're told here in the United States that slavery began in 1619. They don't talk about the fact that the first slaves to arrive were confiscated from a Portuguese cargo ship, and they were set free by the governor of Virginia. Um, there was actually no monetary value coming from the slave trade up until. All right. In 1860, the Civil War. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected to president, and the Civil War began in 1861. In 1862, the Homestead Act was created, where there was government land that were given to people who would work and cultivate that land for 5 years, and then that land would then be owned by those who cultivated the land for 5 years. Following that, in 1862, over 90,000 Americans attempted to do that, and they failed. So in 1863, an agreement was met between the North and the South, and the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, in which slave owners passed ownership over to the federal government, and those who were then passed over to the federal government were allowed to create land using the 1862 Homestead Act. By 1910, a record shows that more Black Americans own land than ever before in the history of America, of the United States of America. Over 14 million acres of land were owned by approximately 210,000 Black persons, leading some historians to refer to this time period as the height of Black land ownership. We no longer own that much land here in 2021. Also, what we need to understand is that we were provided with our own banks at the end of the Civil War, called the Freedmen's Banks. And at its height, the bank had over $57 million in deposits that were adjusted for inflation, of course, and over 70,000 depositors. And at this time, our banks were segregated, and we were only allowed to bank within this bank and other branches of this bank and no others. So this is our own money, and between the years of 1867 and 1873, it was able to bring in $57 million, and these are supposed to be so-called slaves that accumulated this amount of money in less than 10 years. So something right there in history doesn't add up. The one thing that is for certain is that in all of the immigration acts that were signed throughout U.S. history, there are none that include indigenous people, nor people of color, or Black people, or African Americans. So in essence, we are all non-immigrants. And nigga, we say nigger is the racial slur, and nigga is the term of endearment that we use for each other, and the acronym for nigga should be non-immigrants gaining genius always. So keep in mind that you are an American first, not an African American first, but an American first who's indigenous to this land and who is a true non-immigrant of this land.